Welcome to the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. I'm excited to begin this series with EDJ Varsity and the VP of Team Business at EDJ Varsity, Anthony Jones. AJ, great to have you here.
Hey, Keith. Thanks for having me, man. I always enjoy talking to you.
Well, we're going to dig into a lot of things today, and we're specifically going to focus on some of the decisions of the past week and what analytics tell us. But I want to get into a little bit about the background of you and the company, since this is our first time talking. And, before we got going, you and I were talking, and I said, I've always thought about technology. I had a coach who really wasn't keen on it. He wasn't big on using technology. And, we'd always joke around with him. I pulled up a clip from The Office. It's the one where Michael Scott is driving the car, and he's listening to the GPS, and the GPS is telling him to turn right. And Dwight is saying, no, it means bear right. No, it means turn right. I have to turn right. And he drives his car into a lake and sinks it, and his whole time was like, no, the technology knows, the machine knows. And, it's funny as I look at analytics, which I feel are such an important part of our game now. I see more and more people jumping on board with this idea from even the high school level. Obviously, you see it on the pros on game day and, the book where the guys are not allowed to use necessarily some of the technology on the sideline that you guys have, but that data that they have in hand in order to be able to make better decisions on game day, I think is so important. And it's one of those things, though, I think the hesitancy comes in with that idea that you're going to be replaced by a machine. And
No
that
question.
will never happen.
Yeah, that will never happen. It's funny. Edge Sports has been here for 7 years. Our co-founders created the first true simulation engine that allows you to simulate games from any point of the game to the conclusion, to go ahead and understand, hey, what we're trying to do is understand what gives teams the best chance of winning the game.
Right.
That being said, all it is a tool, Keith. You know the deal. Like, it's just going to give you directional recommendations. Sure, we could go a lot deeper, but the guys that are using it the best are using it to make the best decision. Hey, and they're using it proactively to understand on first down, hey, when am I in 4-down territory? Is it 4th and 2? Is it 4th and 3? Is it 4th and 8? And by doing that, you just become more proactive, a better strategic coach, and just put your team in better situations to go ahead and win the game. So, again, but it's only a tool. It'll never replace the art of play calling and personnel and having a feel for the game. What it does, again, it's a tool that helps you coach more proactively. So you're not wondering on 4th down, should you be going for it? If you know that 4th and 2 is a go, you're dialing up 2nd and 3rd down plays to get you into that 4th and 2. Meanwhile, you're going to get that personnel in play in that you want, and it opens up your playbook as well, because instead of just thinking, hey, we're only going to go for it on 4th and 1s out of this jumbo package, if you're going to go for it on 4th and 2 or 4th and 1 or whatever it is, like, then it just becomes a deal of calling your best play. You can do it out of 11 personnel. You can do it out of 12 personnel. You can do it out of just call your best play.
Right.
So it changes a lot of things about the game, and it's fun, and we're certainly seeing it grow. But we've been doing this, me personally, I've been doing analytics for close to 20 years between the NFL, college, and high school, but it's fun.
Yeah. And I want to touch on that too, because you and I had the opportunity to sit down in February in Louisville, and we talked, I don't know, for a couple of hours here, just about your background and how you got to this point. So for our audience, if you would please just share really what's brought you to this point where you're now VP of EDJ Varsity.
Yeah, in a nutshell, I've always been a football guy. Grew up playing football through Pop Warner. Walked on at UCLA, but also was wise enough to quickly know that, look, I wasn't going to be playing in the league. My professional career was going to come up the field, but also always understood numbers and felt like there was a way that they could help, improve the game of football decision making. So fast forward to a few years ago when I got hooked up with EDJ Sports. And as I checked around the league, guys were telling me, yeah, that's definitely a company you want to talk with. I'd spent time after college, working in the NFL. I worked directly for Coach Reed in Philadelphia. And then I was back at my alma mater at UCLA, and I'd worked at high school teams. But, my goal has always been to help coaches make better decisions based on data. And again, it's not the end all be all. It's just another tool. And it's led me to EDJ, and we work with teams at every level of the game, and it's a fun gig. It's a fun gig.
Yeah, well, and I know you got kind of getting involved on game day too, and being able to provide some data to commentators and the different crews who are calling the game.
We do. And I won't mention their names, but yeah, we're involved with network broadcasts. We work doing it for teams, or doing it on TV last year. And I will be doing games. Our team will be doing games this year as well, helping, because the announcers they understand that coaches are looking at the game through the lens of analytics these days. So some of these things that may seem unconventional, they're based in analytics, and the announcers want to understand, is this a good decision or not? And should these guys be going for it? Or there are plenty of teams that still haven't embraced analytics that are missing these things. And so the analysts, the TV guys are doing a really good job of helping us tell the story as well. And it's fun working with those guys. It's all very high pressure. But it's fun, man. Like it's an educational process where it just takes time. Like most folks don't immediately say, okay, I'm all in. Like they want to understand. Coaches want to understand like what you're telling me, man. I've had many a coach tell me at the end of the day, like, AJ, this is all great, but at the end of the day, man, I'm the dude who has to stand at the mic and answer the questions. Like I get that, so again, we're trying to work with them to make sure that they understand that this is just a tool. It shouldn't drive everything they do, but it can help them become just better decision makers in general.
Well, I think the key to it and what you said there is the education behind it, right? Like with any tool, if I just try to start using this with really understanding exactly what is it designed for, how does this all work together? I mean, you do have to start to get that education of just analytics in general, right? What is this data that I'm seeing and what I can do with it? And for us, I think the best way we can illustrate that is to go over some decisions here from week 2. From the past week. We're going to take a look at some of the best decisions, the worst decisions, and we're also going to extend this to the high school level, because this is something that is just not for the big boys, that this can help you on a Friday night win games also. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, if we want to jump into kind of the best decisions, each week we look at the best decisions and the worst decisions in the NFL. And again, when I say worst, I'm not picking on anybody. What I'm saying is, we feel like it was a missed opportunity,
right?
Where had they decided to leverage analytics, they could have put their team in a better chance. So, but with that said, as far as the best decisions go, from week 2, the best decision came out of the Chiefs Chargers game. And I'm referring to my notes here, but it was in overtime. It was a 4th and 1 in overtime, and the Chiefs were just out of field goal range. If you remember, I think they were at their own 46, or excuse me, no, they were at the Chargers 46-yard line. And so it was the second possession, because the Chargers had already, they won the coin toss, the Chargers had punted. So it's sudden death. And the Chiefs realized, look, we need to go for it here. Yes, if we don't convert, it, leaves the Chargers with a semi-short field to go back and attempt a field goal. But we can end the game if we convert here, or have a very good chance of doing it. Just by deciding to go for it, it was the right decision. And we look at all the matchups. The Chiefs run offense versus, the Chargers run defense. The Chiefs had a slight advantage. They were fairly even matched, but if you really dig down, the Chiefs had a slight advantage. And as I mentioned, it was sudden death, and they're expected. NFL teams are expected to convert these 4th and 1s in this situation 70% of the time. Like, so it's all systems are go. You got to go on this. Coach Reid made the right decision, and it increased their win probability by 20%. So great call. They went on to convert. A few plays later, they went on to kick back-to-back field goals for the win. But it was, again, a great call by those guys.
And, I think as you're looking at this now, you're talking, we're looking at this maybe from the outside looking in as a coach who has your product and is looking at something to give him that decision. What does that look like for him? How easy is it for them to see, here's where I'm at right now. Here's what the book says.
Yeah. At every level, it's a little different. So college and the NFL, there's no in-game processing. So you can't have a computer open. You can't do anything. High school is different. High school can use our app live and drill down to specific instances of, hey, what should I be doing here? But we produce what we call game books for NFL and college guys, so they can get a sense. Again, it gives you a very clear indication of what directional decision, run, pass, field goal, punt, gives your team the best chance to go on to win the game. And it doesn't take guys long to get up to speed with it. You can flip through it, and you're kind of progressing as the game goes. You've seen the book, and it's there to be easy to use. It's got to be actionable. So you can stand on what you're telling, hey coach, 4th and 3 is a go. And I shut up and let them get back to coaching. And it's based on a stat, thresholds that we've talked about leading into the week. But it's a really easy product to use,
From an operations standpoint, we've had some guys who use analytics in games. I can think of Brian Flynn, who's now at Princeton, was at Villanova at the time, talked about how they use it. And, there's definitely an operations process that goes along with this as well. So typically, where they're using the book, and we'll get into high school a little bit later when we get to the high school decisions, but when they're using the book, how are they using that procedurally? Who's in charge of it? When is it communicated? How is it communicated? Because if it's not part of the workflow, it's not like all of a sudden, oh shoot, critical situation. Where's that guy with the book, right?
Absolutely.
How are they doing this throughout the game?
Absolutely. It's the same in NFL, college, high school, and with the network TV. It's really one or two people are typically responsible for it. And you're following along with the game state. When I say game state, I mean, what's the scoreboard? How many timeouts does each team have? Where's the ball on the field? Down and distance, all of that. And you can quickly, again, as you're going through the book, understand where these things are at if you're using the book. But if you're using the app live, like the high school guys are, what's the scoreboard say? From that, one of the biggest values is the ability to give this information to coach proactively. You're not hitting him on 4th down saying, hey, coach, 4th and 1's a go. Right. You're telling him on second down, worst case scenario, but you should very easily be able to communicate this to coach on 1st down. Hey, coach, 4th and X is a go. Or there's nothing here, coach. Like, coin flip, do your thing. But what it really enables you to do is to do it proactively. And what's critical is understanding the size of that recommendation as well, the strength of that recommendation. And by that, I mean, sometimes you'll see coaches just say, hey, they go for it. But anybody who's been an analytics student, been in a coach's ear, knows that, like, coach doesn't want to hear, you've only got a certain number of bullets to fire. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you tell coach it's a go, it's got to be a significant decision. And so one of the biggest differentiators, one of the things that we do is we tell you, how big is this decision? Is this a 4%er? Is this a 10%er? Is this a 20%er? And by that, I mean, when we talk about the Chiefs, they made a decision that increased their win probability by 20%. I'm looking at the numbers. So basically what we're saying is by going for it on that 4th and 1, they're expected to go on to win the game 67% of the time. It's not saying they're going to convert every single one of them. It's saying they're expected to win the game 67% of the time. We're not focusing on winning on just that play. We're focusing on winning the game. So by going for it on that 4th and 1, they're expected to win the game 67% of the time. If they attempt a punt, they're only expected to win 47% of the time. So that 20% variance is why we call this a 20%er. So typically, we tell coaches to start with 4%ers. Look at where there's a 4% difference between your two best options. And if the go is 4% or higher, it's something you really need to think of. Sure, as teams get more comfortable, they start looking for 3%, start looking for 2%, or start looking for 1%ers. But you need to understand that there is a difference between these go recommendations and which ones are more significant. So while I won't argue with a coach if it's a 4 or a 5 or a 6%er, and I won't argue with the coach, but if it's a 4 or 5 or a 6%er and they don't go, coach, you missed one, like, but if it's a 7, 8, 10, coach, you missed one. You can tell me your right tackle had a bad ankle. You can tell me, coach, you missed one. You missed one,
And it's so important, as you talked about the process and the procedures on the sideline, like not waiting till 4th down to tell them. So important, right? When you're using a tool like this, because as the play caller, I have probably a little bit of a different process. If I know 4th and 3 is a go by a big percentage, I can look at what I'm doing on those other downs, potentially take a shot in there, knowing that I have 4 downs, just so many things that go into it that it's not waiting right up until that point. Like, what do we do?
And that's a tough spot to put a coach in. That's why we are adamant about using game books that give you the ability to see this stuff early, because we just need to give it to you guys. You guys are smart enough, more than smart enough, to figure out how you want to do this. You know what you're going to. If you know at 4th and 2 it's a 12%er, and you're without a doubt going to go, you're going to coach differently on 1st, 2nd, and 3rd down. Right. Handing that to you on 4th down is that's not fair. That's not fair.
Exactly.
So
let's take a look at the next.
Cool. Yep. The next.
We got Coach McVay.
Yes.
And the Rams at the Eagles.
I love this play because, again, we beat Coach McVay up a little bit last week as our worst call of the week. But I love to see a guy like him bounce back because the guy's got a great mind for coaching. And on this play, there's a few things that I love about it. You know, it's a very unconventional play. They faced a 4th and 1. They're up by 5 points against the Eagles. It's midway through the third quarter, and they faced a 4th and 1 at the minus 29. You know, at the minus 29, most guys, not you and I both know that, like, a very heavy percentage of dudes are not going for it here. They're just, I get it, you know, but Coach McVay made the call, and it was only a 3%er. Still the right decision to go for it. He made it. They converted. Great call by those guys. You know, and he also recognized there's some value that guys don't always pick up on, but there's value in putting your opponent in very uncomfortable, unconventional situations as well. Because one of the things that he said in the press conference is like, look, I felt like we were in a good spot. I trusted my guys. I wanted to go ahead and do this. And I also knew that it would put the Eagles in a challenging situation. Not that they weren't prepared, but it just puts them in a very unfamiliar situation. Like, holy smokes, these dudes are going at us? Like, whoa, you know, that's a tough deal, but a great call. And that was our honorable mention for best calls of the week in week 2. If we want to jump to the other, you want to jump to the other side?
Well, I like this next one. I was so tied up in this game on Sunday night, Seattle versus New England. And well, you know, the game shows you, you know, they ended up on the 1 yard line, and it was really the decision here put them in a bad spot.
And that's one of the things that, like, we don't play results. We're not looking at this after the fact and standing on the table saying we should have gone for this. You know, on first down, we can clearly say, like, look, he needed to go for this. And as we look at it, you know, we compare Seattle versus New England and how they match up. And at the end of the day, they gave up 17% in win probability. 17% is a huge decision. That's a stand on the table. Coach, 4th and 1's a go. Hands down, 4th and 1's a go. So, you know, game state, it was late fourth quarter, I think, a little over a minute and a half left.
Right.
You know, again, 4th and 1 at the minus 31. They're up by 5 points. If they convert this, they can essentially close out the game. But by deciding to go ahead and punt, as you said a few minutes ago, you see what happens. Like, guys think the game's over. You punt. You know, New England got two shots from the 13 and 1 shot from the 1. Like, they had 3 chances to go on to win this game, which is what our model and analytics are picking up on. Like, look, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. I mean, 17% is huge. So it was definitely a missed opportunity. And the last thing I'll say is, if you take a deeper dive, you know, sometimes we talk about, you know, how much guys always say, well, what if we fail? So if we look at 3 things, we say, okay, well, what would happen? Let's go look at the win probability if you go ahead and punt the ball. And in this case, they punted. New England took over at their own 19-yard line. So we look at the win probability at that point. So if based on that point, Seattle's win probability at that point is 72%. Then we look and say, hey, what if you convert? If you go for this 4th down and you convert. If they go and convert, Seattle's win probability goes to 98%. If they go and they fail, Seattle's win probability, if they fail, goes down to 54%. With those 3 numbers, you can look, and I won't bore you with the math, but you can really look and understand, hey, how often do we have to convert on this play for it to be the right decision? With those numbers, Seattle only needed to convert on that 4th and 1 41% of the time for it to be the right number. And again, we know that NFL teams convert those decisions 70% of the time. They only needed to convert 41. This is you know, it's a missed opportunity. It's a missed opportunity.
Yeah. Well, and it took, I think, you know, looking at that, and I did review this play with one of you know, content partners here earlier this week, and we were looking at their very similar play earlier in the game. Cam goes in for the touchdown. It was basically on a counter scheme. They ran another gap scheme here in the same situation. The defense played it differently. You know, so it was one of those things. I think a good call there at the end, and a heck of a play by their guy off the edge.
Absolutely.
Stop that.
Absolutely.
But again, if they follow the book, they might not have even had to deal with that situation.
Yeah. And you know, one of the biggest takeaways, like weeks like this show is, and even last week, you know, good calls are not always really conventional. So there's going to be a lot of really unconventional things that you see in good calls. And that, it just as good calls don't always lead to wins, bad calls don't always lead to losses. So this is a very bad call, didn't lead to a loss. Over time, these will catch up with you. They got out of this one, and kudos to them. Like, hey, they got the W. That's at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. But if you continue to leave these big pieces of win probability on the field, it's going to catch up with you. It's just going to catch up with you.
So we want to look at the high school side of this too, because as we said, this is not just something for the big boys. And so we have a couple games here in Missouri, some what you feel are really good calls here in these situations.
Yeah, two really good calls from last week, our high school calls of the week. We had Holt High School, and it was 3:13 to go in the third quarter. They're down by 7 points, and they're facing a 4th and 1 at their opponent's 11-yard line. For some teams, again, conventional wisdom, kick the field goal, let's play defense, let's come back and get the ball again. When we look at how they matched up at that point, the best decision for them was to go for it, to attempt, to convert. By doing it, they increased their win probability by 10%. Great call. Like, you're putting your team in the best position to go on to win this game. And the other guys were the Lee Summit Tigers out of Missouri as well. Typically, they're from different states. This week, they just happen to be in the same state. Lee Summit, on the opening drive, they faced a 4th and 2 at their opponent's 40. Again, their coach is admitted, like, he's a fairly aggressive play caller. He likes to go for it in these situations. And, this only increased their win probability by 2%, but it's another great call. Like, whatever percentage you can get, whatever percentage you're comfortable with, if it's increasing your win probability, you got to take it. So two great calls. Great call by, Coach Place at Holt Indians and Coach Thomas at the Lee Summit Tigers.
And I think when we look at this, the bottom line, right, is that every decision in a game matters. As you pointed out, some of the good calls always don't necessarily go on to result in a win. Some of the bad calls don't necessarily result in a loss, as we saw with the Seahawks here. But this is about, as you said a second ago, increasing the chances for your team to win, especially over the course of time by making these good decisions again and again.
Yeah, that's the deal, and putting your team in the best chance. And you and I both know too, when guys worry about a bunch of different things, but players buy in as well. When they know that coach has confidence in them to go execute these things. I've never been on a team that's been demoralized by not converting one of these. I've been on teams where we're going to go fight and scrap as hard as we can because coach trusts us, and let's go try and convert and do our best.
I'll make a note here because I think it's worth talking about maybe on the next show or two where we look at this is, educating your players on this as well, because I think that's an important part of it. And we'll touch about that in the future. But, we've made the point that this is something available at every level. And I know it might be tough for teams to adopt this in season right now. We do have a lot of coaches in season. There is a good portion of the country, though, a number of states who are waiting to play their season in the spring. We're looking especially at small college football, those guys still waiting out there. So for a team to get involved in this and the affordability of it, talk to us a little bit about how they can start to fit this into their program. Yeah,
there's a couple of things. So because of the staggered starts with football right now, the guys that are currently playing, you and I both know that once teams start their kind of football operations process, it doesn't change very much from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. So if they're not incorporating analytics into their in-game stuff right now, completely understand it. The beauty of what EDJ Varsity and what we do is, again, not commercial, just telling you how guys are coming on board now, is we all have game reports. So we take your play-by-play file, which there's no additional work for you, and then, how you match it against that team. And we do the work to let you know, hey, on that last game, hey, you left some meat on the bone on this play. Or that, hey, coach, that was a really good call there. Or, hey, that turnover that you're thinking killed you was actually only worth 2% in win probability. Meanwhile, that conversion in the fourth quarter that puts you in the red zone, that play that probably would have gone unnoticed was actually worth 7 or 8%. So we put your entire game in the context of win probability. So guys love using that. Plus, whether you're playing now or you're playing in the spring, using our tool, you can get coaching reps. We're always emphasizing that players should be getting reps. Outside of practice and outside of really game, it's hard for coaches to get reps. But what our tool does is it allows you to watch any game, whether it's a high school game, a college game, an NFL game, a Pee Wee game, doesn't matter. You can watch a game and get live reps to understand, hey, if I were facing an opponent and I matched up against them like this, what would I call in this situation? Am I thinking through this correctly? What are the analytics saying? And so you can start thinking through things like that. So it's a tool that helps you get reps, even if you're not using it in game. It's a pre-game, post-game, off-season tool to get reps.
Right.
Cost-wise, we make it extremely affordable. It retails at $1,500 in the high school market, but that's all in. It gives you access to, our play call simulator, coaching customizations, our game book library, and our post-game reports. And we think it's, again, the guys that have been using it are, big advocates, and we're not trying to charge an arm and a leg for this. We're really trying to make it affordable for guys. So, and we'll work out things with teams if we know with, the environment that we're in with COVID, the teams are strapped. They couldn't raise the money that they normally would with fundraising. Like, reach out, we'll work something out. We'll because for us, for me, for our team, it's more important that we're really educating guys and giving them the chance to start using analytics, because we know that it's a gradual deal. Like, very rare is it for a team that comes in year one using it to its full extent. That's just not how it happens. Guys dip their toe in the water year one. You start a couple of chances, and as the season progresses, by the end of the year, you're comfortable with it. In year two, you're running. But year one, you're crawling and walking. So analytics are here to stay. And the sooner that folks kind of jump onto the bandwagon and say, hey, I at least want to understand this. You can use it as an offensive or a defensive tool. Even if I'm not going to use it on offense, I need to know what that guy across the field when he's in 4-down territory. So I'm not celebrating that 3rd down stop. Now this team's at 4th and 1, and we're running off the field. Meanwhile, hey, they got to play, and they're coming at us. Like, we need to know. So analytics can help you offense, defense, special team. Should you be going for 1 PAT or 2 PAT? Should you be attempting an onside kick? Worked with several teams to figure out, hey, how can we manage our timeouts better? Like, tip of the iceberg is what we're talking about, on-field 4th down stuff. But there's a lot more ways to use this.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm excited that we're going to be able to talk to you about this and point out how this can be used by showing some real in-game decisions week to week here. Our listeners, you could go to edgevarsity.com/blog to see everything that AJ talked about here today, and that's EDJ Varsity. You spell it EDJ. And again, I think this is a tremendous product, a tremendous service you guys have for teams to be able to get the edge. And I want to thank you for taking the time today.
Keith, always a pleasure, man, and always appreciate the time, but always a pleasure. Enjoy talking football with you, man.